nonverbal expression, and by that I mean your facial expressions, body language, hand and arm gestures, as well as those little nervous tics and your posture, make up more than half of how we communicate. Great speakers use great gestures when speaking. In fact, they often coincide with the type of speech they are giving. If it is a grand, inspiring speech, they use grand type gestures and facial expressions. If it is a solemn, sad speech, their gestures are more subdued and their facial expressions more somber. For nonverbal communication, there are three main facets for you to be aware of when speaking: your facial expressions, your body language, which includes things like planned gestures and those little nervous tics, and using your environment to move around. Your face says a lot about how you feel. Do you like pizza? Oh, she's smiling. She likes pizza. Anchovies? Okay, no anchovies. What was I thinking? You get my point. As a presenter, just make sure that your facial expressions match your message. And the only way to really be sure of this is to get feedback from others and/or to record yourself presenting and watch that footage. Other than that, one of the best ways to connect with your audience is to make eye contact with them. Great speakers make the audience feel like they are being spoken to as individuals rather than some faceless mass. And eye contact can help a great deal with that. Now, if you are on a webinar, that means looking directly at the camera and not at your slides or yourself. Now, personally, I like to clip my webcam to a tripod and place it in front of my monitor, not on top of the monitor. So that way, when I'm looking at my computer, it looks like I'm looking directly at the camera. And yes, doing it that way, it does block part of my screen. But for important presentations, it does look better to the audience. Now, for body language, there is actually a lot to this, and unfortunately, we don't have time to cover everything. But beginners to public speaking fall trap or get into some nervous bad habits really easily. And these you should try to be aware of as you practice speaking and have friends call them out if they see you do them. Leaning on the lectern, that's a big one. Usually I like to remove that thing if at all possible. I hate it as a prop. But there are also hands in the pockets, which isn't usually a problem for women, as women's clothing is often absent of decent pockets. My husband is guilty of that one a lot. There's pacing, rocking, swaying. My son does that one when he's speaking in front of an audience. There's also slouching. I'm guilty of that one. And of course, the looking down at the notes too much. Remember, you want to have eye contact with the audience. And looking down at those notes, that limits how much you can connect with the audience. Now, I think we're all a little bit guilty of that one. No one memorizes anything anymore. But body language isn't all bad. There is a positive side through purposeful and planned gestures, gestures that go with your speech and your message. A gesture is made up of three distinct parts: the approach, the stroke, and the return, where the approach is where your body is preparing to move in and anticipating the gesture. The stroke is the actual gesture itself, and the return is the act of returning your body to the normal presenting position. Now, the goal behind all of this is that the audience should only notice the stroke itself. However, that might not always be the case. For example, during the presentation summit last year, on the approach to gesturing at a slide on the screen, I tripped over a cable on the floor and almost head dove right into that screen. Luckily, I was able to recover, do my little gesture, not miss a beat, and return without everyone in the audience noticing what had happened. Of course, it was caught on camera, and I noticed, And when the title of the presentation is Present Like a Hottie, I wasn't really feeling all that attractive in that moment. But it's not about how you feel, it's about how you look and act in front of your audience. So bottom line, things will go wrong. Just try not to draw too much attention to it if it does. Just move on. Now, by environment, the only thing I mean by this is that as a speaker, you should be using your environment. If you spend your entire speech standing behind a podium, you are not using your environment. This guy has a lot more freedom than the last guy and can now move around the stage talking to different members of the audience and really connecting with them. And if delivering a webinar, environment means using more than just slides and your voice to get your message across. Webinar platforms have a wide variety of tools built into the environment for you to engage with your audience, tools like chat and instant polling. Those features are part of the environment and improve audience engagement. Now, I wouldn't really call them nonverbal communication, more like side communication, but they are part of the environment to make up for a lack of nonverbal aspects. And so, when preparing to speak in public, don't forget to keep in mind these 3 important aspects of nonverbal communication when planning and practicing.